Can you quantify for me how much harm is caused by the nuclear family being broken apart?
The nuclear family and the damage which has been caused by us getting away from the nuclear family can be quantified. In a single parent family where there's a woman, single mom, who's running the family, the outcomes for the children, including mental illness, seem to be worse than if there's a single dad. The outcomes still aren't good. They're not like optimal. It's not what you'd like to see. They seem to be better from a single father household when it comes to mental illness than a single mom household when it comes to mental illness in the kids.
It's because single father households tend to make more money.
No, I'm pointing out that your argument that the reason there's less mental illness inside of the children is because mommy doesn't make as much money as daddy would. True, they could be living in more poverty conditions, maybe barely making ends meet for their 3-bedroom apartment or their 2-bedroom apartment for their kids. But the dads have to deal with the same exact thing.
That's not the only reason. I think that likely it could be one of many reasons.
Okay, what are some other reasons?
I bet they wonder why their dad's not there.
Wouldn't they wonder why their mom's not there if they were with their dad?
I guess that's a valid point. Let me think a little harder. Let's see. Do you have an explanation?
Essentially, it has to do with who you bring in. With single moms, they tend to bring in step-parents far more than single fathers do far earlier. Those relationships don't work out. And so
that's a generalization.
Saying 1 in 4 women suffer from a mental health issue. So there's a mental health crisis. The mental health crisis is a generalization, but it is still true.
Okay.
So in this case, yes, they bring in stepdads and step-parents, and so the children are more likely to deal with some forms of abuse and destabilization, whereas in single father households, it doesn't happen nearly as much. That's why.
Is there really a rate at which one sex brings in a step-parent more than the other?
Yeah, there is.
It's the women.
Yeah, we can look at the remarriage stats so that we can understand that. And then
that would be inaccurate, though, if it was just the remarriage stats.
Yeah, but I was going to give you more.
Okay.
So you can look at that. That's one metric that you can look at it. There's also polling done as to who have live-in boyfriends, who doesn't. Pew Research has a bunch of this. I don't remember what the polling agencies are, everyone which has covered it. But yes, it is true, at least it's true as we know, that women do tend to bring in more step-parents.
Can you give me the point difference on those two statistics?
I can't off the top of my head.
You don't even have an estimate?
I don't know what the distinction is, but it's significant. It's a significant distinction.
How is that the women's fault? Because they're trying to find another provider for the home that you think is an important part of their...
they shouldn't have left
You're saying they should grow up in a 2-parent home. What if the original provider left? And you're saying the kid should grow up in a 2-parent home?
Most divorces don't happen because the provider left. They happen because the woman initiates a divorce due to irreconcilable...
What about what are the women who get left going to do then?
If we were just dealing with exceptions, we wouldn't
We're not dealing with just exceptions. We're dealing with a large portion of the...
That's not a large portion.
Men and women are individuals. Stop making it so based on your gender. Only women can break things up. Only women can leave the relationship. That's not true.
And
Men
not
leave all the time. Yeah, but you're saying that it's an exception, which is false. You can't say exception.
It is. I'll rephrase it the best way that I can then. Mostly women are doing this and not men. Mostly women are leaving marriages and not men. Women are initiating 90% of the time. And then if we break those stats down along religiosity, we might come up with some different numbers. But yes, it's mostly women breaking up the home. And yes,
how do you know that's not men's fault?
Because we can ask these women why the divorce happened. And we can look at court documents for the reasons that they put for the divorce. And we can run different polls where we're talking to them. And what we find is the same thing that was pulled up the other night here on whatever. He was a perfect guy. I just got sick of him. I don't like him anymore. There was no abuse. He didn't do anything wrong. I just don't like
Is she not entitled to make that choice if she doesn't like her husband anymore?
I think that if you put your own self's entitlement above that of your children in order to have access to their father in a 2-parent household, you're setting them up for failure. And that's what we see in the stats. If you make the commitment to make children with him and he's not abusing you, he's not beating you up, and he's not abandoning you, he's not doing all the bad things, then no, I think you should put your children before your own happiness. I think you have a duty and obligation to do so.
Aren't the children being exposed to the unhappiness of your marriage?
Aren't your children, though, even if they were exposed to the unhappiness of your marriage, if you're looking at the statistics of how much abuse happens external to that, when these divorces happen and the outcomes on children in these single-parent households, wouldn't it still be optimal for them to deal with mom and dad? They don't always talk to each other, but they're in the same house. They take good care of us. and she prioritized the happiness of us over herself.
But you're putting the onus of the responsibility on the female, which is just
because they're the
not
ones leaving.
Correct. What if
they're the ones leaving? That's why they're not leaving, because dad's beating up the kids or beating up her.
In some cases they are, and those aren't just exceptions. Those are not just exceptions.
In those cases,
they're
I would
huge parts of the
encourage.
statistic.
In those cases, I would encourage those women to leave those men if they're getting beat up or things like that. They should be leaving those men. But if all that was happening is women were leaving abusive men, you wouldn't see this type of mass decadence in society. This would not be the issue. The single mother households are not reporting that they're leaving or filing for these divorces due to anything other than self-fulfillment, not because of abuse, not because of drugs, and not because he's leaving the home, not even because they're shirking their financial responsibilities a lot of the time. Marriage is work, and yes, you should probably sacrifice your own happiness for the happiness of your children. Yes, I think that a woman has a responsibility to do that, and so does a man.
I'd agree, but what are the implications on that argument?
That we would probably end up with much better, more stable nuclear family households, and the reproduction rate would probably skyrocket, and women would probably not have to work nearly as much as they do right now, and probably be way fucking happier and less mentally ill. That's what I would say would probably be the extension of that. It doesn't seem like it was a great idea to wreck the nuclear family. That seems like a really fucking bad idea.